Hello and welcome back to Up the Villa podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by the Athletics' Jacob Tanswell. How are you, mate?
Doing really well, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, really good, mate. So, being as we're in the international break, I've sort of broke it down. So we've got what's just happened since the last international break, and then we'll move our attention to the next phase, which is after this international break, going into another international break. I think fitting into stages feels quite right for how the season's going at the minute. So Villa have played 7 games since September 16th. We are unbeaten in the Premier League. We've picked up 10 points out of 12. We have sort of gone unbeaten in the Premier League. We've beat Palace, Chelsea, Brighton, Wolves. Had a couple of cup sort of not so great games. But how would you reflect on that run of fixtures for Villa?
I think they're really starting to click, aren't they? I think before the Brighton game, I remember saying, they're doing really well in the league. They were 6th at the time, but I didn't feel they fully clicked yet, in terms of how Emery wants the team to play. And you could even argue that only the Brighton game he's been, fully wholly happy with. And the fact that they've not really hit top gear and still unbeaten in the month of the past month. And a 5th in the league, hopefully just shows the scope that Villa have to click on and really march on from here.
Yeah, and when I look at sort of like the next run of fixtures, we play 3 at home in the Premier League, 1 away. We've got West Ham, Luton, Forest away, and Fulham. This feels quite a big phase in our season already, because on paper, most Villa fans would look at it and think, we probably should be beating all those teams. Football doesn't work like that. But do you think that this is like a big phase as well to sort of grasp where we are? Because we'd be going past the 10-game sort of period. Hopefully we can be at sort of 2 points per game still. And then this leads me on to sort of like, where should Villa sort of be looking at this season? So where do you think our aspirations and realistically we should sort of be looking at?
You're completely right in what you say. That I think the games that are coming up, although they look winnable, football never works like that. I think Villa need to show something different to their armoury in those games. They've struggled, as you've seen in midweek, against teams that sit deeper, lower block. Just want to kind of keep things tight, maybe nick a draw, something like that. And these are the type of games that Villa are going to encounter in the next couple of weeks. So they need to show a different side of things that way. Emery's always been insistent, even in his first press conference prior to the Newcastle game, that there's a top 7, and his role essentially at Villa is to break into that top 7. So I think he's trying to downplay expectations. Maybe 8th place, go really deep in Conference League, in FA Cup maybe, but given the start Villa have had, given how they've managed to deal with injuries, big injuries to basically the left side of their team, and as I said earlier, they haven't hit top form yet, apart from the Brighton game. Then you could say that actually Villa have got a really good chance of cracking that top 6 wide open if they continue this way. And who knows, if they go into January where things are still going well, they can boost the squad again and go again. So I think, for me, I look at that Villa squad and I think, you can take advantage of one of the weak top 6 teams, Manchester United possibly, and really crack into that top 6. I think they need to show that they're over those defeats at Anfield and St James's, those 2 big defeats. So it'll be a good test in the next couple of weeks to make sure they continue that consistency.
Yeah, I think we have had a remarkable start to the season, like you say, based on the injuries, based on that left-hand side. I think it's quite easy sometimes when the season's going on and you're just looking at games and thinking we should be beating Wolves and etc. But, the injuries play a massive part, and getting Moreno back and Ramsey in probably 5-6, hopefully 5-6 weeks' time, he can really kick on this season. But for me, when I'm watching Villa at the minute, I still think we're far from the finished article. We're far from what Emery would look at the team and think, that's my team, that's how I want to play. And I think we saw that against Wolves, really. And we saw against Zurinski when he was saying that I tried something a bit different, and we've gone against Wolves to that sort of solid 3 centre halves. And it feels to me like subtly he's still trying to like try different things and see what can work. So what did you make of the Wolves performance and the way we set up? Because it was a stark contrast from the Brighton game. You know, we were sort of like full throttle Aston Villa. We were slicing through them. We were so dynamic. And then on the contrast against Wolves, we were quite sort of standoffish in a way. We sort of, you know, we didn't play that style. And I think that's a testament to our manager, how he can adapt and we don't play the same each week. But what did you make of his approach?
Yeah, it's funny you say about him trialing things. I just find it every time he says he trials things, it always comes like in a tight game, and it makes me laugh at how the guy has so much confidence and the acumen just to know this. But yeah, the Drinsky, the second half, he set up in a back three, you know, trying to chase the game, and he had one number 6 with 2 number 8s, so Tillemans and McGinn moved a bit higher. And that was basically him practicing for the Wolves game. You obviously saw a more pronounced back three of Carlos coming in at Molineux. So he's already, I think, that in mind, even though he was trying to win the game on Thursday, which is just, I find bizarre, but really impressive. So he obviously saw Wolves, how they play. It was a different type of game, horses for courses. Brighton were going to leave more space. Wolves are a little bit more robust, back five sometimes. You know, Craig Dawson, aggressive. He wanted to match that physicality from set plays. He knows that's a big thing of Gary O'Neill's. He knows that they'll try and break up the game. So he knew it wasn't going to be as free flowing. He knew it was a derby as such, you know, the amount of fouls, the atmosphere. So he wanted a bit more, you know, of a robust nature. But I think that in the end took away Villa's flow, really. Obviously, Wolves didn't have with the amount of fouls they conceded, but it was a different type of game, and it's one of those games that, you know, every team's going to have during the season, where it's just going to be a bit bitty. It's going to be difficult to really get into their rhythm. But I think towards the end, I know they had an extra player towards the end. Villa could have easily snatched that, and then we'll be here now saying, you know what, this was a really well earned, you know, really comprehensive performance, and it's really well thought out. So yeah, it was one of those games where I think John McGinn said afterwards he was absolutely knackered in the last 10 minutes, like the last, you know, month and all the past 7 games, you know, taken out with the players. So I think this break, although they'll be on international duty, has come at a pretty good time for Villa just to reset.
Yeah, I think so. I think for some key players like Luis, Konsa, hopefully they've sort of got their feet up while we're speaking and relaxing and etc. So for Villa fans, Unai has absolutely changed our club completely. I mean, you know, you've got sort of like a revolution off the field with Monchi, and it feels special at the minute. It feels like something's bubbling away. And like I said earlier, it feels like we're not the finished article and we're going to grow. And for Villa fans to sort of fall in love with the manager and sort of have a long-term vision, you know, as a fan for so many years, we've been just in the here and now, not got a clue what's going on. And Unai's really sort of changed the culture at Villa and changed the way us fans watch football, because he's an absolute genius, and you see his tactics on the sideline and different games. He does different things, and you know, so I think as fans, it's helped us sort of understand football in a different way and watching a winning type of football where it's all about winning, and I think that's massive. So, what have you made of Unai Emery? Because for me, I still don't think he gets the credit he deserves. It's very much De Zerbi this, De Zerbi that, and Emery's record is better than De Zerbi, and etc. So why do you think he doesn't get as much recognition as he deserves? I mean, I'm probably being a bit biased as a Villa fan, but you know, what have you made of him, and why don't you think he gets that recognition?
I've got an interview out on Friday with a guy who's obviously he's very close to the first team and really good friends with Unai Emery, and he was saying that, you know, he regards, I know he might be biased as well, but he regards him, you know, on a par with Pep Guardiola. He's had fewer resources, less time to do, you know, to compete at the top level. But for me, I think Emery's one of the most eminent coaches in the past decade. You know, what he's won, what he's done in Spain, especially. I think one of the things that might hold him back is you think he rarely qualifies for top 4. Even when he was winning all these Europa League titles, he finished 5th. You know, things like that. He then obviously got the steps up at PSG and Arsenal, bigger clubs, different influences. And for a coach like Emery, who is basically solely focused on football, he doesn't know what's happening outside the club. He doesn't know about politics, the cultures. I think that probably came as a bit of a shock. And in hindsight, he'd probably do it differently because in those big clubs, you have to manage upwards. And that's why he's got Vidigal and he's got Monchi in here, because he's learned his lessons. But I think from the outside, you're probably thinking, right, okay, he's good at Villa, but for those elite clubs, he hasn't done it yet. And I think that probably holds him back, but unfairly, in my opinion. But also another reasons, you said about De Zerbi, Luke. Everyone plays nice passing football. It's always the same, nice brave risk on the ball. Well, Emery's more adaptable. He changes every game, so that he hasn't got his principles. When you think of an Emery team, they don't jump out at you. You don't think, high press, short triangle passes. They change every game, and I think for those who obviously like to see Guardiola or Klopp, they love to see what the identity is. But Emery's identity is that he changes identity all the time. So I think those are key reasons why he's unfairly not ranked in the upper echelons of the coaches.
Yeah, we were talking about Unai Emery there. Last season, you were talking about Nathan Jones. So a bit of a stark contrast for you. So how has it been sort of transitioning from Southampton to Aston Villa? How have you found that? Because, obviously you're reporting on like the actual team, but you get a lot of interaction from the fans as well. So how have you found it?
I found it fantastic, really. I honestly, maybe it's me sounding, I don't want to sound overconfident, but I found it a lot easier than I thought I would, because I didn't realize how welcoming a lot of the Villa guys would be. People who are connected to the club, fans, everything like that. I think they've been really fantastic. And of course, it always helps when the team's doing well on the pitch. It changes the mood around journalists, around just a general atmosphere. And I know that better than most, going from a team that got relegated last season to a team that's competing in Europe. But I've loved settling into the Midlands, living in Sutton Coldfield, going to the training ground regularly, watching women's team, under 21s. I've tried to immerse myself as much as I can, and I'm still continuing to. But yeah, it was a big step up for me in my career, and I had a couple of days to think about whether I wanted to take the role, and yeah, being from looking into it and seeing the excitement from Villa fans, this was back in May when he just qualified after the Brighton game. I thought, I want to be part of that, and I'm really grateful, and I'm glad I have.
Yeah, I think you have literally came at the best time, because you could have came when a couple of dodgy managers were here and we were performing not so great. But when I look at your socials, and I love tactics, and I get the vibe that you really like tactics, and you like read the game really well, and you put some really great stats on. So as an actual football fan, is that what sort of gets you going in football, the statistics side, the tactics side of things?
Yeah, I think especially early on at Villa as well, just when I'm bedding myself in, I always felt like I'd try rely on my strengths, and I think after this week I'll probably try and move away just a little bit from the tactics side of it. I want to go into more featurey pieces, deeper dives. But yeah, analysis has always been something I've wanted to do. I was either going to become a coach or a journalist after I stopped playing football. And I remember for my 12th or 13th birthday, I got a tactics board as my main present so I think that I was always just a bit of a geek. I just like moving the little counters around. I always like to see what a manager does. And obviously with Emery, I'm always really entertained because it's always different. So that's why I'm probably writing a lot more tactical pieces than I ought to, really, because he's always changing. But yeah, that's obviously one of my better strengths. But yeah, I'd like to think that I'll be moving into something else shortly.
Yeah, cool. So finally then, I mean, one question that is on sort of like Villa fans' minds, and we've probably touched on it a little bit of when you were saying about where realistically Villa should finish breaking into sort of like the top 7. This calendar year in 2023, Aston Villa are bang up there. I think they're probably around 5th or 4th or 6th, something like that. We've been in the top 2, this calendar year for quite a long period of time. How far do you think Villa are from competing for a Champions League spot?
They could do it this year. I think all you need is a the right momentum, the right run of form, the right luck in making sure that other teams, are more dysfunctional. And can you break into it? You see Leicester a couple of years ago finished fifth in successive seasons. I know it's got more difficult with Newcastle coming into the frame, but I think Villa can do it. I think it's important that they don't get any more injuries to get the players back. They keep the energy levels high, and I'm sure Emery will want to do that. It really just depends on how they balance midweek as well, because I think we've seen a drop off when Unai has made some changes. So if these players, the likes of Tillemans, Longley, Diego Carlos, if they can start elevating their level as well with more games, then I think that just pushes everything up. And it raises everything, and Villa will start to hit their stride and play and produce the dynamic performances. Okay, not on the scoreline like Brighton, but the same type of performance. So yeah, they can definitely do it this season.
Yes, I think it's exciting, and I think fans should sort of embrace where we are, and it just gotta just keep going, just keep grinding it out, just keep getting the wins, etc. So it's been great having you on the channel, mate. Keep up the good work. I'll put your socials in the description of this video as well, so everyone go and check out Jacob's work. So thanks for coming on, mate.
Top man, really enjoyed that.
Thank you.